You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Are you a diehard comic book collector?
Or maybe a lapsed fan?
Maybe even someone who has never picked up a comic book in their life. Hi, I'm Remso Martinez.
And I'm Mark Claire. Every single Wednesday at the Second Print Comics podcast, Remso and I take a deep dive into the storylines, character arcs, moments, and events that made us the fans we are today.
Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever else podcasts are available.
Check out more from the Second Print Comics podcast at secondprintcomics.com.
Prepare yourself. You're on the run with Remso W. Martinez.
My mom tells me, well, usually when she's reminding her brother and I in front of my father, that when my dad, who's a class of 92 Citadel grad, the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina, that as proud as he is of it now, that as often as he will, talk about the good times and what he likes about it, he wants to go back and do this, and he's gone back and given lectures, he's gone back to alumni weekends, he's gone just to check out the school, hit the gift shop. He's proud of his experience, which was a hard one, and he achieved it. It was a goal he had since I think he was 12 years old. But what my mom will remind me is that when she first met my father, when he was in his early 20s, before they got married, that he would talk about it, and he would say some not so kind things about it, and he did not necessarily speak about the Citadel with love and adoration. Usually, it was words that he probably wouldn't appreciate me saying out loud since he's not here. But over time, his heart has softened towards it, even towards the first military school that he did a year at. It was a military junior college called Valley Forge Military Academy and College in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. He went there for a year, and then he went on to do 3 years at the Citadel. But I think I'm at that point now. I graduated from Marion Military Institute, the Military College of Alabama, in 2015. It was a 2-year military school. I graduated with my associates in an early commission in the Army as a second lieutenant. And I'm still not a fan. I think that I had many, many gripes and complaints about school and the administration and the people and the food and the weather and the town and everything. And it just, I still get frustrated sometimes. But as I get older and as the years are starting to kind of weigh on me, the thing that really gets me thinking is when I see updates from some of the people that I went to school with, and I don't keep in touch with too many. I think probably less than 10, and we've been able to keep in touch over the years. And they're having kids now. They're going bald. They're moving. They're starting careers. Sadly, some of them are no longer with us. So you get to see people really become old people. And as a millennial, it's terrifying. I see 30 around the corner, and it looks at me and whispers, death. But whatever. I got an email recently talking about alumni weekend at Marion Military Institute. And I have vowed never, ever, ever to go back to Marion, Alabama. Ever, 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 ever. And I don't think I'll ever go back. But I look at this time in my life, and I try not to talk about it to other people because I always just end up shitting on it. It was a difficult time in my life, but ultimately, if I've learned anything over the last 7 years since I started, 5 years since I graduated, 6 years since I graduated, so 8 years since I started. God, it's horrifying to think of. I'm trying to focus on the positives that came out of it. And really, as I look back at the things that frustrated me and the things that challenged me, a lot of it was probably my own doing. now the only thing I can do is choose what I reflect upon and how I'm going to take those memories and take those feelings and how am I going to manifest them into something else. Because if I just look back and get mad or frustrated about stuff, it's just going to impact me now. It's like it's just a memory. Yeah, it comes with feelings, but it's done. It's gone. The dirt has settled. The balances have been paid. People have moved on and done so many other things since then, myself included. So today I wanted to go ahead and share with you a little bit about my time there, really my first couple of years in the Army as well. I was in the Alabama National Guard. And this was all preparing me not only really enter my first crucible into manhood, but, prepare me to be an Army officer and just a functioning, contributing member and citizen of society. So what I've done together is I've put together 5 lessons I learned from my time as a member of the Corps of Cadets at Marion Military Institute. Not going to sugarcoat things, but I don't want to dwell on the things that I could dwell on either. I want to keep this productive because that is the best thing to do. I know that is what I should do because it is the right thing and it's a smart thing to do. So starting off, I got a scholarship. I got ROTC scholarship. I got accepted to the school. I was actually the first person in my graduating class in high school to be accepted to a college. And, prior to that, I thought I really am like, my standard was VMI, Virginia Military Institute in Lexington, Virginia. Like that was my standard. But I was basically put on the list of people that could apply a year later if we did school elsewhere, or we were like on a reserve list. And, my ACT scores weren't great. Didn't do enough sports. I don't really know. My math scores, my math grades weren't that great. I had a pretty good GPA. I mean, I was good enough to be basically on the wait list, but I knew that I needed to go where 1, I could get the money to do it, and 2, where I could go ahead and at least become an Army officer, which was my goal at the time, which I eventually did succeed at. So VMI. They're basically like, sorry, man, it ain't going to happen. So I was upset. But luckily, because I had that gold standard, I was still able to get a 2-year Army ROTC scholarship, and I was accepted to Marion Military Institute. So I already had my backup set up, and it's a pretty good backup. It's not have to pay for school, and at this school you can commission in 2 years just by getting your ass kicked for 2. That's a pretty good deal. So I wasn't that upset that VMI didn't work out, but it was kind of there. And what ended up happening was I went to LTC, which is called Basic Camp, which is a condensed basic training. I did that about a week after I graduated from high school. I was 18. I did that at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Graduated, and I had a couple days off, and then I had to go ahead and matriculate into the Corps of Cadets for ITC, initial training course, which is about 2.5 weeks. And that's basically where you learn how to drill and prep your uniform and all the things you need in order to be a cadet in the Corps. And it was a rough summer. I mean, it was incredibly hard. It was one of those situations where I was afraid of everything because you see the videos and, I watched the show called Surviving the Cut, where they basically take you through like what it's like to try and become a member of like the Navy SEALs or Air Force Pararescue, Navy EOD, MARSOC, Green Beret, Army Rangers. And then, you go on YouTube and you go on the YouTube rabbit holes of how to prepare for basic training and everything. So it was rough, but here's what I ultimately was able to figure out. By the time I had finished training at Fort Knox and I went into the Corps of Cadets, I just spent all summer like losing weight, learning how to be a soldier, at least the basics, and getting yelled at by adults that, were just screaming in my ear constantly. It was not fun. And the weather was terrible too. I mean, Fort Knox, it's always terrible. But I go from that and I go home and my friends have really very little understanding of what I went through. But I mean, they could see how it was physically on me. I lost a ton of weight. I was a big boy going in. I came out a lean freaking killing machine. but I was afraid of what the Corps cadets would be like. And let me tell you, my first day, as I moved into my dorm with my roommate, and they do a little barbecue for the families, and you hug your parents, and you kiss your mom, and you go march off to the barracks, and that's when they just fuck around with your head all night and make you run around, do push-ups, scream at you. I was really, really intimidated. But here's the thing, like within 15 minutes, I realized that this was nothing, because here I am, half the cadet staff weren't even part of the ROTC curriculum I was in. So I have like these fat, I mean, like you wouldn't believe it, but there were some fat people there, like big, like, fat Albert, fat people who are yelling at me and calling me names and telling me to do push-ups. And it's like, I want you to do a push-up with me. And, quickly it got to the point where it's like, this is a fucking joke. And mainly it was one of those situations where it was like, I just went through all this shit and this is supposed to be difficult. What was really funny was that, you don't have to be going into the military to go to military junior college or any military college except the service academies. So I was part of the ECP, the early commissioning program, Army ROTC. You had people that were prepping and go to the service academies, Coast Guard, Air Force, West Point. You had people that were just part of the Corps of Cadets, so they were just regular civilians that were just doing the military school experience. And for those guys specifically, like they're crying and they're freaking out, and I mean, they just for them it was a lot. But it was one of the situations where I actually just tried to have fun with it. I mean, my roommate and I had both been part of the same battalion at that point. A bunch of my friends who I went through everything with during the summer were also there with me. So I was pretty familiar, and we're just looking around. We don't want to be smarmy because we don't want anyone to like zero in on us. But it was one of the situations where it's like your fears are probably worse than reality. And it was that phase. I remember when we started doing military science lab and everything, where you're doing like squad level tactics and you're learning how to basically, to do assaults and stuff like that. It was also another situation where it's like, you think you're just going to get yelled at and everything's just going to suck all the time. But really, the worst thing that I could possibly think of were the things in my head, because nothing was ever that incredibly difficult. And ultimately, as you're going through it and you're just paying attention to the here and now, and you're just trying your best, ultimately, things were pretty okay. And that sums up a lot of things. I've dealt with a pretty bad anxiety throughout my life. In the last couple of years, primarily, I've tried to really take care of it, really address it. And the one thing that you learn in therapy when you're going through this is that everything in your head is the worst case scenario. And really it is, because, often if you're worried about something, you have to ask, like, what really is the situation? And you go ahead and break it down. And realistically, 9 times out of 10, none of my greatest fears ever became true. And often I think about how I was when I was 18, imagining all these terrifying, extremely difficult, horrifying scenarios. And I compare it to myself as an older adult now. And I look at that and it's like, I stress myself out. I let it affect my personality and my decisions. And ultimately I just need to remember this. And this is the first point that I want to reiterate. Your fears are probably worse than reality. Secondly, you're going to fail sometimes, but that's the result of daring to try. The fact that I was able to make it through Fort Knox that summer was big. I was not an athlete. I was not in shape. I was overweight. I had to lose. I lost 40 pounds that summer. Like none of my clothes fit me when I got back, and most people in my neighborhood didn't recognize me. I went from being the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man to being, in my mind at least, Jason Bourne. Though I still had to, get some muscle tone and some cardio endurance. But like I looked like I could, bite the head off a bat, get into a bar fight. It was pretty fun, especially with the shaved head. But at that point, I had gone through that. And I'm thinking this is the biggest challenge of my life. And really, as I look back, that was the biggest challenge of my life. Because it was just one of those things that it's like every day was just, I had to take things day by day. It was really rough, spiritually, physically, emotionally. It was rough, but I go through that and I'm thinking nothing can hurt me. I already went through hell. What's going to be worse? And then I go through ROTC with my friends, and we end up, graduating from that a few weeks later. And I mean, I just remember the people that were like quitting and dropping out and stuff. It's like, it'll just end soon enough. So I'm thinking, wow, I'm even a bigger badass. I've gone through 2 really difficult things that make people quit over the summer. I mean, lots and lots of people just fucking quit, and they go home and they do the quitter's walk, and everyone makes fun of them. Like, I never wanted to be that person. So I go through that, and I think I'm just the biggest fucking badass. And then what I tried to do my first semester was I tried out for the honor guard. And, at the school, you had the honor guard. They're the guys that do drill and ceremony, take care of the big parade flags and everything. Then you had the White Knights, which was the precision rifle drill team. Then you had, who else you had? You had Swamp Fox, which was just like a frat where they basically take you through the equivalent of like Special Forces selection. But it's more like how often can you get waterboarded and go weeks without sleep while also trying to do homework. I wanted to do honor guard, and it was about a 3-week training and selection. So all you really have to do is just pay attention, learn the stuff, and wait it out. And, at this point, we're doing classes. So if you weren't doing classes, you were doing everything that the honor guard cadre wanted you to do. And they had their own command structure and everything. So, like, your squad leader in the Corps of Cadets could theoretically be the honor guard company commander. It was kind of all over the place. But, my grades were not solid yet. For the APFT, the Army Physical Fitness Test, I had not passed it yet, so I couldn't actually contract into the ROTC battalion, which, and that was really important, because the sooner I contracted to actually, be on the course to eventually get a slot to go to LDAC, which is now called Advanced Camp, you need to be contracted to go that, so then eventually you could actually commission at the end of the 2 years when you get your early commissioning and your associates. So then you could go on to your your follow-up college to finish undergrad. And, at that point, first semester, not everybody, who was in the program was able to commission first semester, but you had to get done your first year. So if you could get done first semester, that was saying something. And, because it was one less thing you had to worry about. But, at this point, I've got all this stuff going on, and I think I can go ahead and rack on one more. But I had slept through my alarm clock for honor guard PT. And at this point, ROTC PT was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and honor guard PT was Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. But if you were doing Army ROTC, if you were doing Army ROTC PT, you had to do that. So, it was one or the other. I had missed a Thursday. So at that point, I remember the honor guard first sergeant kicked in the door to my freaking room, and he's yelling at me, and he's like, you want to quit? You have to go outside and you have to say you want to quit. And that was it. What you had to do if you wanted to quit the honor guard cycle was that you had to go in front of everybody and you had to say, I quit honor guard. The idea of doing that horrified me. Ended up allowing me to quit that because I was on the brink of either fucking up my grades or not being able to, focus on working out to get ready for my BT test or everything else. It was the fact that the dean of the college, he liked me, brought me and gave me some advice, and he was like, listen, man, you can't do everything. And, I was pretty heartbroken, and I told him I can't go out there and say I'll quit. So in a way, I kind of copped out because he said, I'm going to go ahead and just pull in the guy, and I'm just going to tell him, I've decided that you shouldn't do this. Which is ultimately what he was recommending. He was like, something's got to go, and this is the least important thing. So even though I did not have to do what all the others had to do who quit and say it in public and have the public shaming happen, it still hurt me nonetheless. But in the long run, it was the best decision that I could make, because I had to contract eventually. I would eventually contract towards the end of the year. I'm pretty sure I was the last person in my company to contract. And luckily, one of the reasons why was because every first year cadet had a second year mentor, and mine was the battalion the battalion sergeant major for the Corps of Cadets, who was also Army ROTC, who was airborne school and air assault certified. His name's Tyler Mauser. He was also the commander of the Ranger Challenge team. Ranger Challenge is like the varsity sport of ROTC. The battalion ROTC military science professor military science PMC, he assigned him to me because he's like, if this guy can't get you ready, nothing can. And, I did Ranger Challenge for the spring, and that got me up to passing tests. They were giving me, like, towards the last couple of months, they were giving me, like, 3 PT tests a week. And luckily at this point, I was passing all of them. So all the stuff I need to pass, I eventually passed. And I got my scholarship, and I was able to get a slot to go to LDAC. So, my journey there was good. My grades were up. But none of that would have happened if I had ended up just failing the first semester, because I didn't have, I didn't have the ability to look at the full situation, and my ego got in the way. And it was like, yeah, I would have done this extra thing, but that extra thing would have actually screwed up all the actual reasons I'm here. So, which is to say, sometimes you'll fail, but that's the result of daring to try. And, I've succeeded at a lot of things, and I've failed at a ton. And it's just how it is. What I saw pretty often was that the people who were just, the term is spotlight ranger, the people who it seems they are perfect at everything and they never fail, and they're just the top of the top. When those people would fail or lose at like the slightest thing, for them, it was like the biggest fucking problem that they'd ever encountered. And they end up just spiraling out of control. And they either, most of the time, they made themselves quit. It's like they self-sabotage because they couldn't take it. The thing is, if you fucking fail, just fail, learn your lesson, and move on. But they would take it as, I'm a failure for life. And they would just let it just completely screw them over. So, failure's going to happen. Success is going to happen. But, you're not deemed one or another just because of the streak you're on. So just, you tried, you failed, move on. You can try again. I could have done it like my second year, probably should have. But at that point, I was like, I'm already out the door. I'm about to get all my shit and leave. This won't matter at my next school. No one will give a shit. I'm not wearing a uniform. So, yeah. Third, stress will show you a person's true colors. There's a term I learned, very, very familiar term for anyone who served in the military. Blue Falcon. Blue Falcon's a PC way of saying buddy fucker. And your buddy fucker is the guy who takes all the toilet paper from the latrine because you're all given a ration of toilet paper. Your buddy fucker is the person that won't help you carry your load, so he lets you fail. And when you fail, the whole squad fails. And when the whole squad fails, the platoon fails. And when one of you fails, you all get punished. He's the person that rats you out. He's the person that lies to you. He's the person who, slacks off. And when he slacks off and your room has failed a room inspection, your shit gets tossed on the floor too. My first roommate was a giant buddy fucker. He actually had done all those things. And when he would get in trouble, I would get in trouble, because it was one of those environments where it's like when one fails, we all fail. And we all remember that person. The other thing, though, is this was the first FTX we had. It was our first field training exercise. And I want to state that at the beginning of the cycle, so not even before the school year started, this is like pre-Fort Knox, they had something called Tiger Camp. And Tiger Camp, before it became the pussy force it is now, where, you see photos online of the people going through that and they're freaking smiling and shit. Tiger Camp, when I went, was where they bring down a couple of drill sergeants, leave them unsupervised, and they fuck with you like no one can imagine. Like, people who have dealt with this type of stuff before know what it's like. But For somebody that thought that this was just where they prep you to go on to LTC at Fort Knox, this was where essentially they were like, if you're going to be part of this early commissioning program to try and become an officer, a leader of men in 2 years, we need to weed out the weak. At the very beginning, so it would have been in class of 2015, this is starting in June of 2013, we had almost 130 people. By the time the school year started, so let's say after ITC, so right when you're part of the Corps of Cadets, they're no longer going to haze you, all that stuff. When the school year started, it went from 120 something to just around 76. And by the time the semester ended and they started doing cuts, it was about 50. And then I think it was like around 40 or so that went to LDAC. And in terms of people that came back, it was around 38. And by the end of the year, the people who had actually graduated from the school with their degree and their commission in the Army, it was about 27. So it was one of those situations where it was like, people got kicked out because they failed PT tests. People got kicked out because of disciplinary issues. People got kicked out because of grades, or a mix of all those things. And just a lot of people fucking quit. And, it was that factor. But the other thing is, like, you get to learn about people. And you're going to learn things that you really admire about people, that from people you might not expect. And you're going to learn things about people who you do respect that are going to make you really question that. One of the people during my first FTX, he was leading a squad during an ambush exercise. And the thing about Marion was to its strength, because it's in the middle of nowhere, they could set up like little Vietnam behind the school. So barbed wire, trenches, bunkers, everything you need to simulate like, an austere Vietnam style environment. I say that because this program was created to accelerate the number of officers into the military during the Vietnam War. It was there. So, we're doing this exercise and we're moving through the woods. We've got our rucksacks and our, dummy rifles and everything. We've got our face paint on. We're in full combat mode. One of the guys in my squad accidentally falls and gets trapped in old serpentina wire, and he is screaming and it's cutting into him, and we're all looking at him. We're like, we got to get him the fuck out of there. And we're just like, bud, just stay there. The more you move it, the more it's gonna hurt you. The squad leader who was being evaluated, he cared more about getting a good evaluation and, getting to where he needed in the time that he was expected to get there. He turns around and looks at us and he says, leave him there. He knows what he got into. We need to finish this. And that just shocks the shit out of us. That goes against the soldier's creed. That goes against everything we were ever taught. So it went from, we're doing an evaluated exercise to, fuck you, dude. I don't care about your fucking score. We got to get him out of this fucking wire. And we did. And we even went on with the fucking exercise. And we completed it. And when it came time for us to meet with our evaluator, and he's like, what went right, what went wrong, we all fucking looked at him. And this dude who otherwise, successfully executed the ambush, we all looked at him and we're like, you're a fucking terrible leader. You left him, you were going to leave him there. What part of no man behind did you not get from everything? Needless to say, at the end of it all, he did not get to commission with us. He didn't even graduate. He had a 1.5 GPA, so he ended up getting kicked out. But if he had not gotten kicked out for that, he would have gotten kicked out because he was just a shitty leader. So stress will show you a person's true colors. There was also, one of the really difficult things was that you had to do peer evaluations, and the people who got the worst peer evaluations, like this guy's an asshole, this guy's lazy, this guy's untrustworthy, you that did factor in. And, what they really tried to stress, and this was during sequestration during the Obama administration, second term, there was only, I think that they said there could only be 30. And it's funny because there were less than 30 that were able to commission. They were like, there can only be 30. So there's like, 40 plus of us. You had people right in a, and I had friends do this of me. They're my best friends. They're like, Martinez, we're going to get through this together. We're going to succeed. We're going to get those gold bars. It's going to be the greatest day of our lives. Then we're all going to go, Tuscaloosa and like get laid by a bunch of University of Alabama cheerleaders. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be like, leaders of men, and, terrorists are going to fucking fear us. I look at the fucking evaluations from my quote friends, and they're like, Martinez just slow. I fear that he doesn't have the courage to be a leader. So they're writing this down because, and many other people did it, and they like it was actually a growing problem. The PMZ actually pulled us in. He's like, a lot of you are Blue Falcons. You're fucking each other, because if you couldn't get, it's like Survivor. If you couldn't get rid, if you knew that there were other people who were probably better than you and more likely to succeed than you, this was your opportunity to bring them down a notch. And, it came down to stress and fear, and people were willing to betray their friends in order to do that. And it was one of those moments where it's like, it's just one of many. I can think of so many. But that was the stuff where it was like, this is actually going to impact a person's future potentially. Like it was just one of those things where it's like stress will show you who a person really is. Use time to your advantage. After you complete ITC and you crest, which means you're a part of the Corps of Cadets, so you get to wear the crest of the Corps, meaning you're part of the legacy and everything. Other than training, unless you did like a lot of extracurricular activities and stuff, honor guard, drill, swamp fox, ranger challenge, whatever, you had a lot of time, like a lot of time. And in the town, there was nothing there. The nearest Walmart was an hour away. It was about a 2-hour drive to Tuscaloosa, 3-hour drive to Montgomery and Birmingham. You're in the middle of fucking nowhere. And the school had like nothing for you. So if you weren't studying or working out, you had to figure out what you were going to do with your time. And I mean, the gym, it was like a prison gym. And if someone didn't wipe off the equipment, they would punish the entire Corps and, close the gym down for like a couple days. And it was just one of those situations where it's like, there's nothing worse than being bored, stressed, and with nothing to do. And I think I convinced my parents to get me Hulu. So like I could spend all day watching TV and stuff and going online and seeing, my people like my buddy Sean on the Degenerate panel that you may have heard once or twice on the show. The goal afterwards, after I graduated, was to go to University of Arizona, where Sean was, and we were going to room together, and we were just going to party. So, Sean is texting me and calling me, and he's like, dude, it's fucking lit down here. He's having the time of his life. He loved his time at University of Arizona. And I would have gone there, except, I ended up wanting to go Liberty University instead, which is the exact opposite. But, that's another conversation as to why I chose that ultimately. But I read more books than I have ever read in any other period in my life. In fact, I was told that the 2 years I was there by the librarian, I read more. I borrowed and read more books from the library than any other cadet. I read a lot, and it wasn't always just like military strategy, history, leadership books and stuff. I read a lot of fiction too. That's where I really started reading Ayn Rand more closely. I read a lot of political philosophy. It was just about keeping my mind sharp and keeping my mind off the immediate environment. Also, I worked out like a mofo. If you see current photos of me, you're probably just like, that dude's not American Ninja Warrior, but I got pretty good. Not to boast. I was doing CrossFit. I was doing all that stuff. Like I was working out, and not just because I really had to, but just because it's like, what else are you going to do? There's nothing going on. I would sign up for seminars, and, at one point I even applied for a scholarship to go to the Cato University, which is done during the summer. So during the summer after I completed LDAC, I immediately got on a plane to San Francisco, and, it was just keeping busy. And that's what I've learned, through everything I've done. It's like, you've only got so much time. And it's why I'm working all the time. Sometimes it's because I really need to do something. Sometimes it's just because I need to keep myself busy. Because the one thing I hate is when you go and you just watch like an entire season on Netflix of a show, or you just waste time. And it's like, that's time you're never getting back. So I use the time there because I had it. And, I studied. My GPA was better there than when I went on to Liberty. I'm just glad they don't put GPAs on diplomas, because my Liberty GPA was kind of scary because I was not utilizing my time. I was distracted. I was just trying to have fun, do all the things I thought I should have done, when in fact I should have just been studying, working out, doing the things that I was really there to do. But yeah, use your time. And a lot of people wasted it. And, those are the people that are just like, they fail, or they get kicked out, or they, get removed from a program. And they're just like, man, I just wish I had used my time better. I heard so many people say that. There was a guy, he was in my barracks. He was in the ACP program, and literally he would even skip classes for this. He would just play League of Legends. I don't know if that game is still around, but it was an online game. Was not studying, so his grades were shit, was not working out, never passed a PT test. And when his parents came after they learned that he was getting removed from the program, they're just like, no, give him another chance, give him another chance, give him another chance. And, the professor of military science was like, okay, convince me. What did you do with your time, and what are you going to do differently? And when he told him he had spent all his time in his room playing video games, the guy was like, you knew that this was a accelerated program, that we're going to have a very small number of this current class actually commission at the end of it. And the dude was like, at the end of it, this is my fault. I did not take advantage of my time. So, that's it. Use time to your advantage when you have it. And lastly, and this is what I've always had to remind myself when I'm really going through a rough time, when I'm really feeling like I'm at the bottom of where I could potentially be. When I showed up, they would do they would do a OML, official merit list, which basically showed you your ranking amongst your peers. And my first OML of like the 76 around the 76 people that were like around midterms, when we were doing midterms to see our mid semester OML, I was like 74. So like there were literally only two people worse than me. I was like 74. When I commissioned, I was like I was still, because my grades had slipped a little bit the last semester, I was a little bit towards the end, but like I was better than like 10 people, and only like 27 had done it. So I was like in the early 20s, mid-teens. But, I looked at it, and I looked at, on stage, it's like we've got 27 people, and we started with like 120 something at the beginning of this all. So I saw myself as, I was the 1%. I was the person who literally started at the bottom of the fucking barrel. The only reason that I was at least not crying myself to sleep at that point for being the worst was the fact that I realized that there were people who had literally just given up and quit, threw in the towel before anything real had happened. This is just to assess who can actually qualify to at least begin the program. And, that day, I graduate with my degree and I commission. It was one of the greatest days of my life. But really, and I tell this to a lot of people, where you start isn't where you finish. And you have to want it more than anyone else does. Because I remember when I was doing entry interviews with the colonel who was in charge of our program, he asked me, like, why are you doing this? And I was like, well, I want to serve my country, but it's going to help me get a head start on my potential civilian career, and it's going to teach me a lot of valuable skills. He's like, and I'm like, it'll make me marketable to other people, and it'll make my parents proud. And he's like, listen, man, this is going to be freaking crazy. We're going to ask a lot of you. This is a program where very few of you are going to get through. You got to want it more than anybody. And that was it. Like, I wanted to quit, like, many, many times, but I didn't. I talked to my parents, and they'd be like, you can, but like, we can't want it more than you want it. You have to want it. And, to go home after I packed my dorm at the end of graduation, when I've got my gold bar and my diploma, like it validated that it's like, this was all me. I had to do it. I was lucky. I had good friends. I had good mentors. I was given a lot of good advice. I was given challenges that really taught me a lot about myself. But where you start isn't where you finish. So that's about it. And the other thing is, I had really poor confidence. I had really low confidence in myself, just in life. Like, I was just kind of a square guy. I still think I'm kind of a square guy, but like one of the things that had kind of pissed me off towards the end of my time there was that a lot of the core traditions and stuff, like shower parties where it's basically you just assault and throw shit at people on their birthday and you toss them in the shower and you throw food and stuff on them. Shower parties. We tased somebody in one of my companies. It was fun. Stuff like that we couldn't do. There were just little traditions that I can't name off the top of my head. If I looked through yearbooks, I'd probably remember, but like little traditions began to go away. And one of the things that was really unique was that on the bricks of the chapel, which was the admin building, the tradition was that every graduate of MMI can carve their name on the chapel bricks. And what they had told us was that we would be the first class not to do that, and that would no longer be a tradition because of, it could possibly cause damage to the structure and all this other stuff. So we were just like, we went through all of this and we're like, they're taking this extra thing away from us. Like, this is fucked up. So, and then they threatened that anyone caught doing it, keyword caught doing it, would be fined $2,000 and would be sued for property damage. So me and a friend, she was a softball player. We had actually gone on a couple dates that semester. I text her and I'm like, hey, I got my multi-tool. It's getting kind of late. It's a Saturday. A lot of people are gone. Let's go frickin' carve our names on the chapel. So literally we did that. And, I put R. Martinez because I want my writing to be bigger. And, most people just knew me as Martinez. I'm pretty sure there were people that I graduated with who would never know my first name, unless we were like Facebook friends or something, because everyone just referred to themselves by their last name. So I carve my name. She carves her name. We look around. We're like, oh my gosh, we just did this. And it's in a part of the building that no one's really going to notice. And then, I look over and, she's looking kind of cute. And I go for it. I kiss her, and she kisses me back, and we had a fun afternoon. I'll leave it at that. But I did something that me at the very beginning would have been like, no, you don't do that. You'll get in trouble. Don't do that. Listen, be a good rule follower and everything. So I go from that to 2 years later, having gone through all this shit. I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. And then, I kissed this girl, and I had never necessarily been much of a player. So for me, go my way and do that and succeed at that, that was pretty cool. That was fun. But, it just taught me that it's like, just take the chances sometimes. You just gotta get through it because, unless death is a potential opportunity, unless severe jail time is a potential opportunity, there are worse things than just failure. So to reiterate, lesson number 1, your fears probably are worse than reality. 2, you'll fail sometimes, but that's the result of daring to try. 3, stress will show you a person's true colors, including yours. 4, use your time to your advantage. And 5, where you start isn't where you'll finish. And the unofficial one, just be bold. Man, sometimes you just got to kiss the girl. You got to go carve your name and potentially get $2,000 fine. But there are worse things. Other than that, I look back and maybe one day I'll go back to an alumni weekend, but I don't want to look back at all these things and just think it was all terrible, that nothing was gained. And, there were things that happened that, I look back and it's just trivial in the grand scheme of things. And, while I wasn't necessarily like number 1 cadet, while I never got really some of the things I wanted to get out of being a member of the Corps, like I gained friends for life. I gained lessons for life, opportunities I would have never had. And I'm a better person because of it. So, I'm choosing to look back fondly, despite the challenges and the fears and everything else, because that's a choice to change the lens in which you view the circumstances as a choice. And I'm better because of it. And these are the 5 lessons I hope benefit you in one way or another. Please, if you liked this episode, share it with a friend. Leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. I ask with every episode. It costs you nothing, but means everything to me. And I'll talk to you later in the week. As always, be good, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later. I'm Remso W. Martinez. Good night.
You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com, like The Chris Spangle Show, Liberty Explained, The Brian Nichols Show, The Boss Hog of Liberty, Freedom Strips with Keaton Tucker, On the Run with Remso Martinez, Gingerarchy with Tricia Stewart-Mann, Upward, Libertarian Activism, and Now Hear This. Tune in now and we're going to help you sound smarter when talking with your friends.